there is a supernatural world that surrounds us. Sometimes it manifests to people like you, and there are stories about this, so much more, right here on Supernatural Confrontations. I am not in my studio. I think that's pretty evident. I am at the Prophecy Watcher studio, and we just shot some programs today with Mondo Gonzales. Mondo will join me because what we're going to talk about is absolutely unbelievable. Mondo's book is one of the most timely tomes. That really rhymes, doesn't it? And it certainly is, should be read by everybody because it's coming down. It's here. It's no longer future. It's happening right now. So we'll get into that. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor.
The 401k was never designed to make you wealthy. It was built to shift risk onto you, leaving your retirement exposed to Wall Street's crashes, inflation, and chaos. That's why thousands of Americans are moving into gold. Noble Gold helps Americans just like you roll over part of their 401k into real physical gold. Tax advantage, penalty free, and shock proof. Get your free wealth protection kit now at noblegoldinvestments.com. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com. Take back control before it's too late. And folks, get rewarded for getting started. Open a qualified account at noblegoldinvestments.com, and Noble Gold will send you 2 5-ounce Silver America the Beautiful coins free. Once again, folks, noblegoldinvestments.com. Peggy and I invested several years ago, and I have to tell you, we are really glad we did. As with any investment, there's always a certain amount of risk, so look at the information carefully and then make your own decision.
Hey, folks, before I bring Mondo in, and again, I'm at the Prophecy Watcher studio, and I want to thank Tyler for doing the editing here and getting it over to John Adam, and also Bob and Gary Stearman and just all the folks here. It's always an honor and pleasure to be part of the Prophecy Watchers Club, as it were. But I want to ask you something. We do 7 shows a week right here on our YouTube. Most of it's for free content. But for members only, you get the extended version. And I'd encourage you to sign up because it helps us do what we love to do, which is talk about the supernatural, talk about prophecy, talk about the things of the Lord. So, Mondo, thanks for coming on the record here. Really appreciate it.
It's always a good time.
Hey, you wrote this book, and I've read it, and we carry it in our store. And just last week, I believe, there was a headline. And I think it went, not global, but in certain aspects of being global. I don't think the New York Times covers it, let's put it that way. But what they did is they did a mock sacrifice of a red heifer. Walk us through that, please.
Yeah, I think, interestingly, a couple of years ago, for backdrop, CBS News went to Israel and they did a full video and documentary. It was more of a hit piece, I think, on Israel in general. But so that did hit national news for sure. And when the 5 cows came over in September of 2015, or 2022, September 15th of 2022, the press was there and the Israeli government was there. So it was a big deal. So, but this last week, what surfaced, it was Israel National News. That's the website. And so it's kind of gone viral in the prophecy world.
Right.
And is that there was simply a 5-second video clip of a red heifer burning. It was on a pyre. It was in flames. And you're like, but you could tell immediately that it was not the Mount of Olives, because Mount of Olives is very unique in its backdrop. There's landmarks that are very well known. So when you're looking, you're like, oh, this looks like Samaria, which is where Shiloh is, which is where the 5 cows were or are. And so that was all you had. Well, then since there's been a few more bits of information. I did reach out to Byron Stinson, who is the owner of the 5 cows. Honestly, he's the one that is boneisrael.com is their website, and they're the ones that brought the original 5 over. And so it was very clear. He said that they took one of the ones that was disqualified, and of the 5, there were 2 that are still preliminarily qualified. But 3, they took one of them and they did a practice run. Now, in my book, I write about that this wasn't the first time that there was a practice run of at least burning of a cow in all the rabbinic stipulations. And it was done in 2019, a professor from Bar Ilan University. And that's a whole other story. I documented all the book. But this is the first time they've done it with one of the 5, which is pretty incredible.
What I find interesting is, and apparently just recently, they discovered this letter from a high-level Hamas guy, and in that letter or that declaration or whatever it was, basically this man said that one of the reasons why Hamas attacked Israel is because of the heifers, because of the ritual burning of the heifer, and then taking the ashes and creating the Temple Mount. And then they also said, and there was a video of this where they were releasing the hostages. We are the flood. And it showed a six-fingered fist like this. Al-Aqsa, we are the flood. Talk about that.
Yeah. So what you're referring to is a recent development. The first development happened in January of 2024, which again was a few months after October 7th of 2023, right? The terrorist attack. Well, in January of 2024, Hamas made a public statement that one of the reasons why they attacked on October 7th was because of the desire for Israel to change the status quo on the Temple Mount, like you mentioned, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which honestly, that's just complete propaganda. There's been no official attempts to even, the Al-Aqsa Mosque isn't even in the location. It's on the southern side of the Temple Mount. So even if there was a temple, it doesn't have anything to do with that mosque. Okay. And the Dome of the Rock, which is in the center, is not really a mosque anyway. But anyways, for propaganda reasons, they brought up, according to their language, the red cows, and what we understand is the 5 red heifers. So that was then, which it did work from a propaganda piece, because this was January of 24. So Trump's not around. He's candidating, but Biden was still in his last year, and so the goal of the Bonnet Israel.com group, who has the cows, they were going to do the ceremony on the Mount of Olives. They own 2 pieces of property. It has to be on the Mount of Olives, okay, according to rabbinic and really the Mishnah, okay, with the Jewish writings. Well, they were planning on April. So you're 15, 16 months ago. That's the plan, was to have the ceremony. Well, of course, when Hamas came out said what they said, it created a whole thing. Israel's in war. And so they didn't want to risk any more inflammatory things that would happen, which would disrupt their ability to wage war against Hamas in Gaza from the Biden administration. So they were squashed all of the ceremony plans. Okay. Well, now Trump's in. So all that to say, recently, when they're going through Gaza, this wasn't a public declaration by Hamas, like the January of 24. This was a letter it was an internal memo that they found from the Hamas leaders, where they were saying, hey, and it was really a great insight into their propaganda movement. And so they said, hey, because we see things changing, we see basically the Israeli government changing things on the Temple Mount. Of course, the heifers are in the news. So they referenced them as being part of the whole Third Temple movement gaining momentum. And this was this internal memo about how they could spin it and try to inflame the rhetoric of people, and not only in Gaza, but among the Islamic world, among the people in the Palestinian Authority, in Judea and Samaria, and so the West Bank. So they were looking, this was their strategy, how to inflame in order to try to stop the momentum of the whole Third Temple movement.
Let me ask you something. We know from prophecy that the temple is going to be rebuilt, and that's my first question. Is it literal, or is it allegory?
It's interesting because I address this specifically directly in the book, because as I was doing interviews, people were like, well, what's wrong with you people, you Christians? I mean, and from other Christians, what's wrong with you dispensationalists? Don't you know that we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, 1 Corinthians 3:16?
Which is true.
We are. True. Yeah. So let's look at the context. There's no doubt the Bible uses that phraseology in the book of Ephesians, as well as in 1 Peter 3:16, 1 Corinthians 6:19. You have these other passages talking about our bodies, the temple, or the church is the temple. No doubt. Okay, context is key. But what we know is the Greek word naos can be used of a physical temple. Jesus was walking in the temple and teaching, right? Or in the temple courts. So the word needs to be done in context. And so in the context of Revelation 11, it's very, very physical. Certainly we see in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, where Paul says that the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple of God, declaring himself to be God.
It's just allegory.
I don't even know how you'd make it now.
It's allegory. It's never going to happen.
Well, it's like, where's he sitting? Is he sitting in the church? Is he sitting in my human body? Because that, so I address all those things and go, look, it's ridiculous. It's very straightforward if you read it. But secondly, in addition, those are the only two instances of where you would have some sort of crazy interpretation. Matthew 24:15, Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation sitting in the holy place.
There you go.
Okay, that doesn't even use the word temple. It uses the word holy place, specifically a reference to what we understand as the Holy of Holies, the holy place, the outer courts, typical Jewish language referencing Herod's temple. So people can't make that figurative. We also know in Daniel 9:27 that the Antichrist would confirm the Mosaic covenant for 1 week, 1 year, or 7 years, and then the sacrifices and offerings. So you could only have sacrifices and offerings in a literal temple. So when you look at all of the imagery, and it's very, very literal, even though we recognize there are times when it is figurative, but not in these ones.
No way.
There is a literal temple being going to be built.
And that temple, the outer court, is given over to the Gentiles.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting? Speak to us.
So see, again, this is very important. When you read Revelation 11, and John is told to measure the temple, okay? But it says, measure the temple. And so he goes, and the word measure, it's very specific in Greek. The word is used to measure something physical, okay? And so it's clear in the book of Revelation. But it says, leave the outer court, because that's going to be given over to be trodden down by the Gentiles. So when you think about that, the temple being there in the middle, you have outside of that the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Bingo.
Okay, that's Gentile country. So even in the very text itself, at least for the first 3.5 years, you have that central location being measured. It's going to serve its purpose prophetically. The Antichrist is going to sit in there, but the outer courts are going to be given. So I see, based on that passage, in the future, some sort of international agreement where the Jews are going to have their temple, but the other ones aren't necessarily going to be removed.
They won't be. No, because if you did something to Alaska, you'd have World War III on your hands.
And they don't need to.
They don't need to, because it's I've been to the Temple Mount. I know you have too. If this is a 40-acre Temple Mount like this, here's Alaska over here. You enter this way. Right in here, there's at least 10 acres. Which they don't use for anything.
The whole plaza. And when I was in, I visited a guy in Dallas. His name's Robert Mawiri, Dr. Robert Mawiri, and he was the guy that found the original heifers. So I had a great interview with him. He knows Netanyahu by name, and they're friends. Whatever. So he said, "Hey, you want to see the temple plans, the architectural plans?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I got them in my office." So we walked in there, and he showed me the plans. And what you see there, and this is just one set. Things can change, but the way that this was designed was there was a huge wall,
which is prophecy.
Yeah, there was a huge wall that divided the temple area itself from the outer court.
Yeah, there you go.
It was fascinating that the at least according to the current situation, which again it could change, they had no problems allowing the Alaska and other Gentile
to remain
with the wall separating them, so they could still do their.
There is the fulfillment of prophecy when that happened, which is unbelievable. What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding. So Mondo and I are die in the world dispensationalists. We are biblical literalists. We believe what was written, what is there, and it should be taken literally. My question is this: why the red heifer? And explain the fact that it's got to be completely pure. Why the obsession with this cow?
Well,
Why?
it's this is again why I wrote the book, because my undergrad's in Jewish studies, so I study Talmud and Mishnah, and it gets very convoluted. Okay, I'll just be honest with you, but I thought I want to understand. I understand the New Testament. Matthew 15, Mark 7. Jesus is arguing with the Jews, the Pharisees, about the tradition of the elders. So I thought I got to understand this stuff. Well, up here we have this. This is not a genuine red heifer because it's got white all over it, but it's just a cow. That's why we put it up there. It's a heifer. So, okay, but it's in the Bible. So what I tell people is, that's how I started the book. Why should we even care? Because number one, the red heifer ceremony is in the Bible. It's in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. So This is something you got to think like a Old Testament Jewish person, not like a Christian post Jesus. Now, I'm a Christian. I'm not promoting any of this. I'm just telling you, if you're a rabbi,
This is their mind.
this is their mindset.
Right.
And as a Christian, I'm trying to get in their mindset to understand their mindset.
Right.
So for them, they don't care about Jesus. They know nothing about Jesus. They've never read the New Testament. They don't understand any of that. They're thinking, okay, God wants us to follow his law. He wants the Torah. So we need to follow all the law, which is the sacrifices. It includes Moses. It includes the red heifer commandment. Because if you ask him, why are you trying to find a red heifer? They go, why are you asking a dumb question? God commanded it. That's the end of the story, which that's their mentality. So God commanded a red heifer. They need the red heifer to burn it. It's not a sacrifice. That's very, very clear.
Right.
It's not a
It's not
sacrifice.
a
A sacrifice happens on the altar of the temple. So that is not, it's not
But
happening.
the altar is not in existence.
No.
Right.
This is a ceremony that happens on the Mount of Olives, that they slit the throat, they drain the blood, they sprinkle the blood towards the base of the Temple Mount. They burn the cow whole. They collect the ashes, they mix it with water, and then they use that to purify people who have become ritually impure through primarily a dead body or potentially any other impurity. That's why. So hypothetically, if they built the temple tomorrow and they had permission, they could not fully use it because they don't have
The red heifer.
the red heifer ashes.
So let me ask you, isn't it, I find it absolutely fascinating that all this is coming into play, including I read Sonda Allison, my editor, sent me a link where they're talking about cutting out the stone, the cornerstones of the temple. I mean, this is all happening, like as we're speaking. This is all happening. They could. Well, let's go to the Mount of Olives. First of all, that's a crazy place. And how are the Jews going to sacrifice a red heifer on the Mount of Olives? I mean, how is that going to happen?
Well,
what do you think?
So they have two pieces of property that are there, which according to the Mishnah, again, this 2nd century 200 AD writing of the traditions of the elders of that Jesus mentioned. It has to be high enough to where it could look down and see, so the elevation, so it could look down into the temple, at least during the 1st century. Well, the pieces of property they have are right in, I mean, they're surrounded by Arab villages.
So that's not going to work.
Well, no, it has to work.
Really?
But the only way they're going to be able to do it is with massive security. Now, they could, if Israel's security, if they make the decision, we're going to have this ceremony, and they do it, they can get it done.
Let me throw you a scenario. So let's say they get it done. Let's say they get the ashes of the red heifer. There's no way they can build a temple at that point. They can get up there, they can use the ashes, but they still can't build it.
Oh yeah, that's a totally different political.
So, but would that lead in essence to the guy that signs the deal and allows them to build the temple?
I think
who do you have a candidate for that by any means?
I don't. I do. I'm one that I'm pretty confident that, even though there's a lot of disagreement, that I think he will be Jewish. I do. I'm probably in the minority on that, but
I've heard that for years.
Yeah, and some people that make good arguments again that he won't be. That's fine, for whatever reason. But what you do see is, again, Daniel 9:27. He will make or confirm
that covenant for a week.
Covenant for a week.
There's
But
7-year tribulation.
But literally, the Hebrew verb is actually kind of rare, and so if you look at the Septuagint, and the best thing is, he will cause to prevail the covenant. Okay, what's the covenant? It's the Mosaic covenant, and so it's the covenant of Moses. And I was just writing an article about this, where in Daniel 11, as an example, this is the word covenant appears in Daniel 11. Well, in Daniel 11 it's a portrait of one guy that's extremely famous, Antiochus Epiphanes.
Yeah, there you go.
And he was in 167 BC. He is the one that persecuted the Jews. He was a Seleucid king. He's the reason why we have Hanukkah, okay? Because he polluted the temple, okay? So people look at him as the guy, as a prototype of the coming Antichrist. He committed the abomination of desolation, which is in Daniel 11, which we see in Wells, Daniel chapter 12, and Jesus mentioned it. So here's the prototypical guy. Well, what did he do? he came against the covenant. He violated the covenant. What covenant? The Mosaic covenant.
Mhm.
So when you have the context of all of Daniel, this Antichrist guy is going to come along. He's going to allow them. Why does he want the covenant to be in existence?
To proclaim
To pollute it.
Oh, okay, polluted.
Which is exact. He's going to follow in the footsteps.
Do the same thing.
He's going to do the same thing of his forefather Antiochus. So he's going to somehow have the ability. He's going to dupe the Jews. He's going to somehow have some sort of something. He's going to get them to build their temple. He's going to sign. They're going to see him. If you ask a Jewish rabbi or religious person, what's the Messiah going to do? The Messiah is going to cause the law of Moses to prevail in the land.
Wow.
So this guy, that's exactly what Daniel 9:27 says. He causes to prevail in the land the covenant. Okay? Well, it doesn't say the word land, but it causes to prevail the covenant. And then in the middle of the week, he stops the sacrifices and offerings, commits the abomination of desolation. It's round two. Jesus said, if you want to understand, let the reader understand what Daniel wrote.
Right.
So this is why, even though Antiochus wasn't a Jew, which again would be an argument for a non-Jewish messianic figure. So in that sense, if you had, I think that what the Jewish people are doing in John 5:43, Jesus says, I've come on my Father's name.
Right.
You don't receive me as
Right.
Messiah.
Another one will.
Another will come and him you'll receive. So somehow they're going to accept this guy's authority. And
I mean, who? Wow.
it's pretty fascinating.
It's absolutely fascinating. What I find incredible is, and I said this before, and we're going to wrap it up here. What was written will come to pass. And what was written, you got to take it literally, because as soon as you don't, well, the church is, and all this other stuff, and Israel, these really aren't the Jews, and these are Khazarians, and, you can tap dance around that till the cows come home. These are the Jews. Amos 9:14 and 15. If they're not, then God's a liar.
Yeah.
And you can't plug Amos 9:14 and 15. As a dispensationalist, we are still in the dispensation of grace. I think it's going to end, and maybe sooner than any of us think.
Let's hope
And
so.
we're going to, exactly. And we'll enter the time of Jacob's trouble. And if these aren't the Jews, think about this. If these
Or
are,
we won't enter the time of Jacob's trouble,
we-
but the world will. We'll just make sure. I don't want you to say this. Just an email.
not entering the time of Jacob.
I'm going to send you some emails.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Otherwise, LA, I can't believe you said that. So when Jesus returns, he returns on the Mount of Olives, and that baby splits in two. Oh, that's just allegory. He's really not going to do that. He's going to return on the Mount of Olives. He's not returning to Walla Walla, Michigan. That's not going to happen. The Mount of Olives. So if these aren't, and they will look on him whom they have pierced and mourn for him as an only son. So if these aren't the Jews that are there, who's going to mourn for him as an only son? I mean, put that in your all-millennial blender and good luck, because you can't swim out of that thing.
No, I think that's the key. Is part of the foundation in all of our discussions is, look, the prophecies of the first coming
Are literal.
Are literal.
Amen.
And 99%. Now there's a couple that are interesting that can be figured for their own, and the writers doing it, but 99% are literal. So in the second coming, let's go with that. 99% are literal. There might be some that have some figurative components, but not what most amillennial people or covenant theologian people do is they switch it. So now 99% are figurative. And you're like, well, when did we switch the rules in the middle of the game?
How does this work?
Mm-hmm.
Folks, you can get the book, and it's an incredible read. I have read it. I love it. And I find it's almost interesting the way the Lord led you to do that.
Before
Anything
Like,
has happened. And now he's like Mr. Cutting Edge. And congratulations on the book. That's fantastic. You can go to our store, lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com. Thank you for subscribing here. Consider being a sponsor. We can certainly use the income, the extra income stream. We need it. And that's basically all I'll say about that. But thank you for your support and what we do. We do 7 shows a week. Mondo, thanks so much for coming on the record.
That was good.
Folks, the supernatural world is real. It surrounds us. And I think very soon we're going to see it manifest right here in the natural. I'm Marzulli. Thanks for watching.